in the dim, neon-drenched shadow of the interstate, where the law's long arm often shortens to a hesitant twitch, there are men who live by a different clock. They are the Sons of Perdition, a motorcycle club born from the grit and the forgotten corners of the American South. The world calls them outlaws, criminals, the residue of a society they refuse to be part of. But to the few who've seen past the leather and the ink, they are simply the last line of defense. Their code is carved not in marble, but in the scars they carry. Honor the innocent, protect your own, and answer injustice with the swift, unforgiving hammer of the road justice. This is the story of Preacher, not a man of the cloth, but the chapter president of the Sons, a man whose name was a legend whispered in the deep rumbling bass of V-twin engines. He earned his moniker not by quoting scripture, but by offering absolution to those the system had condemned, not through forgiveness, but through retribution. Preacher was a giant of a man, eyes the color of faded denim, and a beard that spoke of 10,000 miles of asphalt and forgotten hope. He wore his cuts like a shield, and beneath the patch of the winged skull, his heart beat with a ferocious, if twisted, sense of righteousness. The story begins in the desolate expanse of Redemption County, a place where the local sheriff's department was little more than a payroll for a local cartel run by a former state senator's nephew, a greasy little tyrant named Silas Vance. Vance wasn't just dealing drugs. He was systematically seizing properties, using local zoning laws and fabricated debt to push out the aging, land-rich families who had worked the soil for generations. The law wasn't failing to protect them. The law was actively robbing them. One such family was the Millers, a widow, Eleanor, and her 2 young grandchildren, barely clinging to the last patch of their ancestral farm. Vance wanted the farm for a new trucking hub, a place where his contraband could disappear into the network of the free market. He gave Eleanor a week to sign over her life, her history, and her children's future. Eleanor, desperate, went to the local sheriff, Frank Holcomb. Holcomb just adjusted his collar and murmured, "So just business, Eleanor. Best take the offer." The system had locked the door, boarded up the windows, and left her to the wolves. But the outlaws, the wolves the world feared, they were watching. Preacher's crew had a silent communication network woven into the fabric of the county, run through dusty bars, weary truckers, and the quiet dignity of the people the law had forgotten. A bartender named June, who owed the Sons an old favor, a matter of a stolen motorcycle recovered with surgical precision and no questions asked, sent the signal. A single cryptic message: "The old church bell is silent in redemption." Preacher understood. The law's moral compass had stopped spinning. It was time for the Sons of Perdition to administer road justice. The next evening the Sons rode. 20 bikes, a rolling black thundercloud against the sunset. They didn't roar through town. They moved with the disciplined silence of a force that had long ago shed the need for grandstanding. Preacher led the pack, his custom Harley Judgment vibrating beneath him, a beast of chrome and polished steel. They pulled up to Eleanor Miller's farm. Vance's men, a trio of loud, cheap thugs, were already there, spray-painting eviction notices on the barn door, their pickup truck idling carelessly. They were just street-level muscle, but they represented the rot of the entire system. "Back off the property!" Preacher's voice was a low growl, amplified not by shouting, but by the sheer, contained violence in his tone. The thugs turned, surprised, then sneered when they saw the MC patches. They saw easy targets, local criminals they could intimidate and then boast about later. "Looky here," one of the thugs, a man named Gator, spat on the dirt. "The Devil's Choir decided to show up. This ain't your territory, fat man. This is private business." Preacher dismounted slowly, pulling his colors tighter on his chest. When you put your hands on the innocent, it becomes the Sons' business. The road justice code is clear, Gator. You hurt the helpless. You forfeit your peace. The ensuing confrontation was not a fair fight, nor was it meant to be. It was a lesson, delivered with the brutal efficiency that only men who have fought for their survival against impossible odds can wield. The Sons didn't use guns. They used hands, boots, and the weight of their combined fury. They didn't want to kill the men. Not yet. They wanted to send a message that would echo all the way up to Silas Vance's penthouse office. Gator ended up with a broken arm and a profound new respect for the phrase, road justice. The eviction notices were torn down, burned, and the ashes were swept into the thugs' mouths before they were told to crawl back to their boss with the message, "The farm is protected. Touch it again, and you'll answer to the gavel." This act put a giant bloody target on the Sons of Perdition. Silas Vance was not a man to be humiliated by a motorcycle gang. He had the local sheriff in his pocket, a network of corrupted officials, and the belief that money could buy silence and obedience. He put out the word. Preacher and his top lieutenants were to disappear. A few days later, the Sons were meeting at their clubhouse, a fortified, unremarkable warehouse miles outside of town. The mood was somber, not from fear, but from the quiet preparation for the storm they knew was coming. As Preacher went over the logistics, securing the Miller family elsewhere, reinforcing their own perimeter, the floor gave way in a deafening, blinding flash of white light and sound. Vance hadn't sent police. He'd sent a commercial explosive team. The blast was designed to wipe the entire chapter out, a clean, brutal solution to his problem. Preacher, pinned under a support beam, felt the searing agony of broken ribs and the heavy, metallic taste of his own blood. The air was thick with smoke, dust, and the screams of his brothers. He looked up through the swirling haze and saw the wreckage, a wall of debris, a tomb of concrete and steel. Then, through a gap in the splintered wood, he saw a flash of light, a secondary charge placed to ensure nothing living walked away. He was trapped. The end of the road. This is where the legend truly begins, the moment the outlaw looked death in the face. His mind, trained by years of violence and survival, bypassed the pain. The survival instinct, the one that had kept him on the right side of the dirt for so long, screamed one final instruction. With a primal surge of adrenaline that fractured his remaining dignity but saved his life, Preacher shoved against the heavy beam. He didn't move it, but he shifted his body, just enough to tuck into a small pocket of reinforced concrete, right before the second blast ripped through the warehouse. The world dissolved into white noise again. When the smoke cleared, Preacher lay there, battered, bleeding but breathing. The man who cheated death. He was the only one visible who moved. He had to crawl out of that rubble, not just for himself, but because road justice had only just begun. Vance had just escalated a property dispute into a war of survival. The Sons of Perdition were broken, but not defeated. And Preacher was coming for the man who tried to bury him. Preacher crawled out of the wreckage an hour later, a ghost covered in the dust of his own near annihilation. Every breath was a shard of glass, every movement a scream muted by sheer willpower. The warehouse was a smoking, twisted monument to Silas Vance's depravity, but amidst the ruin, a small fire of defiance still flickered. He found Reaper, his vice president, alive but barely conscious, trapped beneath a section of roof, and Ace, the club's resident mechanical genius, sheltered by the robust frame of his custom bike lift. Preacher, operating on a level of pure instinctual command, ignored his own shattered body. He focused on triage, extracting his brothers with careful, agonizing effort, using leverage and the knowledge of the building's weak points only an inhabitant would possess. They needed medical aid that the local corrupted system would deny them, or worse, use to finish the job Vance started. Preacher's plan was immediately forged in the heat of his rage and the desperation of their situation. He knew the police would arrive soon, not to investigate the bombing, but to confirm the accident and clean up the surviving evidence, namely them. They commandeered the only operational vehicle left, a battered utility truck hidden in a back maintenance shed. It wasn't the roar of their Harleys, but the sputtering engine was the sound of life, and that was enough. They drove not to a hospital, but to the shadows, to a forgotten safe house known only to the founding members, miles away in the scrubland near the state line. This was where the outlaws became the hunters. For 2 days, they treated their wounds with supplies scavenged and secretly dropped off by June, the bartender, their only remaining contact in the corrupted town. Preacher sat in the quiet dark. letting the pain fuel his resolve. Vance had crossed the line that separated common crime from the most grievous sin in the road justice code, the murder of a brother. The code demanded not just retribution, but the complete dismantling of the threat. It wasn't about revenge. It was about protecting the few good people the Sons had sworn to look after, starting with Eleanor Miller and her grandchildren. Preacher knew a frontal assault was suicide. Vance had power, money, and the badge. The Sons had none of that left. But they had something Vance never understood: loyalty and a reputation for impossible persistence. Preacher's strategy was to attack Vance where he was weakest, his carefully constructed web of financial deception. The money trail was always the anchor of the criminal system. Ace, despite his injuries, set up a makeshift command center in the safe house, utilizing his technological skills to crack into Vance's digital defenses. They discovered the full extent of Vance's operation. He wasn't just stealing farms, he was running illegal arms shipments disguised as agricultural supplies, leveraging the seized properties as staging points. Eleanor Miller's land was the final piece of the puzzle, crucial for its proximity to an old, disused rail spur. The documents also revealed the identity of the corrupt state attorney and the specific arrangement with Sheriff Holcomb, a $50,000 monthly bribe to look the other way. The proof was irrefutable, but worthless without a way to get it into the right hands not stained by Vance's influence. The time came for the final ride. Preacher couldn't use his bike, so he drove the utility truck, Reaper and Ace riding shotgun, their faces grim, bodies patched up but unbroken in spirit. Their target, a major covert arms transfer scheduled for midnight at the Miller farm, the very place Vance had tried to steal. Vance, confident that Preacher was dead, would be there to oversee the operation himself. They didn't arrive with guns blazing. They arrived with a plan honed by desperation. The utility truck was rigged with a simple, massive EMP device Ace had constructed from salvaged parts, designed to temporarily scramble the security communications and surveillance at the farm. The Sons arrived just as Vance's men began offloading crates from a semi-trailer. The EMP hit, plunging the area into confusion. Preacher and his brothers moved in the darkness, spectral and precise. They bypassed the hired muscle, their goal singular: reach Silas Vance. They found him near the barn, barking orders into a dead radio, his face twisted in panic. "Vance!" Preacher's voice, raspy and low, carried the weight of the collapsed warehouse. Vance spun around, recognizing the towering shadow. His face went white. You're dead!" "I killed you. Death takes time, Vance," Preacher said, pulling a leather-bound, heavy book from his vest, the Sons of Perdition codebook. "But justice is immediate." Vance lunged, a small, expensive pistol appearing in his hand. But he was facing a man who had wrestled with death and won. Preacher didn't flinch. He used his bulk and momentum, not to fight, but to drive Vance backward, directly into the semi-trailer's open container. The resulting fight was vicious, brutal, and swift. Preacher wasn't fighting for survival this time, he was fighting for the road code. He disarmed Vance and used the heavy code book as a weapon, striking not to kill, but to incapacitate, to deliver the sentence prescribed for those who victimize the weak and betray the public trust. Within minutes, the other thugs were subdued by Reaper and Ace, who expertly leveraged the chaos and their knowledge of close-quarters fighting. The evidence, the arms, the documentation from Ace's hack, and a very battered, very conscious Silas Vance was all secure. Preacher didn't call the local sheriff. He drove to the closest federal district office in the next state, the utility truck full of incontrovertible proof. He walked into the lobby, battered, bleeding, and presented his case to the astonished duty officer: the financial records, the photos of the weapons, and the testimony of Silas Vance, now thoroughly terrified into cooperation. He also provided the secure contact information for Eleanor Miller, ensuring she and her family would be protected by federal witnesses. The Sons of Perdition walked away that night, disappearing back into the shadows of the highway. They didn't seek thanks, recognition, or clemency. Their actions weren't for the law, they were for the road code. Vance was arrested, the sheriff was indicted, and Eleanor Miller's farm was saved. The official narrative was convoluted, speaking of an anonymous tip and a sudden investigation. But out on the asphalt, the true story was whispered. The outlaw who cheated death returned to deliver justice where the law refused to tread. Preacher and the Sons were still outlaws, still riding the dark road outside society's rules. But they were the righteous few, the true keepers of the forgotten, applying the hard, necessary hand of road justice. For the innocents of Redemption County, they were not criminals. They were the heroes who rode in the dark,